Welcome to Becoming Limitless. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs who want to optimize their brain and their body with biohacking. I'm going to teach you how to eliminate brain fog and upgrade your health so you can have more productivity, energy, and growth in your business. I'm your host, Tanessa Shears. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Becoming Limitless podcast. Okay, are you up for a challenge? Do you want to try something new without the daunting, conversation that we have in our head about committing to something long term? I know for me, I love to take on mini challenges, whether it's with my health, whether it's with my eating, whether it's with my fitness. And I love doing these challenges because they feel like a motivating kickstart and it lets me try new things without my brain being like, well, if you start it, are you going to continue it forever? What's the plan, right? It lets me experiment and then I get to evaluate, what do I love about this? What don't I love about this? What do I want to keep? What do I want to get rid of? How do I want to modify it? And so that is actually pretty much how the 30-day walking challenge was born. And that's what this episode is all about today. We're going to be talking about the 30-day walking challenge that I just wrapped up. Now, this was something I did as a coaching accelerator inside of my Becoming Limitless program, meaning the entire community, we banded together and we did this walking challenge together. Now, this is not to say this was, oh gosh, no pun intended, a walk in the park. There were definitely some parts of it that were challenging, that really made me dig into my discipline. There are things I learned about my body and about my brain and myself. And this honestly has been one of my favorite challenges that I have done so far. And so in today's episode, I want to shine a light on how you can do this challenge if it's something you're interested in, a little bit about the experience that I went through as part of this challenge, and I'm so excited to dive right in. So let's first talk about the importance of why walking is so important. Now, when we always think of fitness and cardio, we're always like, okay, we should run, we should do the stair climber, we should do elliptical, we should do HIIT training, all of this high intensity stuff, right? What we forget about is that there are so many amazing benefits to our mental health, to our longevity, to our cardiovascular system by just walking. I think it's one of those most underrated things that we can do with our bodies is just to walk more. And so in doing this challenge, my goal was to see if I could add more daily activity. And if you've listened to this podcast before, you've probably heard the term active couch potato that I like to talk about, meaning we have these days where we will work out intensely for an hour. Let's say we get our morning workout in and then we'll sit all day long. We sit at our desks, we sit in our cars, we sit on our couches, we sit at our kitchen table, we sit. And we're just inactive all of the time. So you're an active couch potato technically. So the reason I love walking and why I feel like paying attention to things like your daily, if you're using an Oura ring, like your daily activity burn or your daily step count, these things are important because they look at activity over a day. You can use these metrics to approximate that so much better than just an hour workout. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing an hour workout. Why I came to this challenge was I wonder if I could add some activity into my daily life and move more throughout the day. Because if you want to do a walking challenge, it's going to be something that is going to naturally get you moving for a little bit more during the day. So let's talk. So that's why I love the idea of walking. First of all, mental health, physical health, longevity, energy. It really picks up your energy at the end of the day. My goodness, I absolutely love doing it. So when you go to do this walking challenge, let's just dive right into it. There is a couple of things I want you to think about when you're going into this walking challenge. And like I said, it's a walking challenge where you're going to walk every day for 30 straight days. Now, when we get into this challenge, there's 3 different routes you can go when we look at the intention of approaching a challenge. And I love to be very intentional when I enter into any type of challenge, right? I want to know, what do I want to get out of it? What is my main target? Because that'll help you set a lot of your parameters for your challenge. So with this here, mental health is one of them. So anybody who walks regularly can tell you what a relief it is to just be able to be out in nature, to be walking, moving your body. It's low intensity. It helps you break up that stress from sitting at your desk all day in your business. It makes a big difference on your mental health to be able to walk. There was actually a reel that came across my feed on Instagram while we were in this walking challenge, and it talked about something that I feel like I'd heard about in school but forgot about until I heard it again, and it's called optical flow. when you are walking outdoors and the scenery is going past the sides of your eyes as you walk by, it triggers something in your brain that actually calms anxiety and calms overwhelm, and it acts on the emotional center of the brain, and I believe it was the amygdala, and it really helps to settle that. So walking outdoors, not only does it get you moving, it helps alleviate stress via this pathway. I really know that whenever I'm having a bad day, if I just get out under the trees, even if it's not in the trees and walking around the neighborhood, such a wonderful place to just be able to let go of the day, just focus on what I'm feeling here and now. So number one, ask yourself, am I doing this for mental health? Like, am I doing this as a break in the day from my business? Am I doing this to really help with overwhelm and stress and anxiety? Because that is a beautiful reason to do this challenge. Reason number two is for longevity and health. So if you're walking at a brisk enough pace, you'll get into something called zone 2 cardio, which is about 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. Now, this is great for your cardiovascular system. Obviously, it helps with longevity, it helps with body health. So if you are getting into this for health reasons, maybe you want to do something where you're focusing on the number of steps you get, right? So are you getting into this to improve your overall health? Maybe you want to lose a little bit of body fat. Maybe you just want to have a more activity in your day, like we were talking about earlier, like your activity burn is higher or your step count is higher, right? And the last way I like to use these challenges is for developing discipline. Now, I think of this as, you've probably heard the metaphor of sharpening the saw, of creating more discipline around the things we want to get better at. So for me, when I went into this challenge, I was using it as a discipline challenge, because for me, I really love this idea of having my own back. So when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. When I tell myself I'm going to do 30 days of walks, I really like to explore my brain and notice the conversations that comes up and the drama that comes up and the feelings that come up in my body. And what I love to do is use these 30-day challenges as a method of teaching myself that, hey, you can feel these negative emotions and still do the things. You can not feel like getting up for a walk and still go for your walk. You can see rainy days outside, pick up an umbrella and head out for a walk. Like, I love those conversations with myself, those self-coaching moments, and really being able to trust myself to do what I say I'm going to do. And I get to build this skill 30 days in a row. And now coming out of this 30 days, like, heck, I showed up every day for 30 days. And I didn't want to, I would say, at least half of the time. So for me, the fact that I was able to manage my own brain at least half of those days on days I didn't want to now just strengthens my skill of discipline. So coming into this challenge, do you want to do it for mental health reasons and just feeling relaxed and stress-free? Do you want to do it for activity levels and, moving more during the day and heart health and all of that? Or do you want to do it for discipline? Heck, you can even do it for all three. I just like to really focus on one of them and have the other ones as kind of like secondary. So for me, it was developing discipline. Now, when you go into this challenge, there are two things that I want to mention that I think are going to be really important in this. Number one is accountability. So when we did it within the Coaching Accelerator, we were always posting our daily walks, our step counts, photos of us, and it was so motivating to be able to be in a community of people that we're all on this same challenge. And if you're not in a community that's doing a 30-day walking challenge, could you recruit your partner or your sister or a friend, someone who could do it alongside you, someone you could maybe have a private WhatsApp chat, and then being able to check in with each other, be like, did you do your walk today? Because that was something that was really helpful for me. The other thing was, as I announced on Instagram, like, hey, I'm doing a 30-day walking challenge, and I posted a video, I think most of the days that I did the walking challenge, but there were so many days in my head where I was like, I don't feel like doing this, but my brain was like, yeah, but you will have to go to the community and be like, I didn't do it today. You're going to have to go on Instagram and be like, I didn't do it today. And for me, sometimes that's a little bit of a motivation to have that conversation with myself about, hey, we're going to show up today. So find a way to hold yourself accountable, find community, find someone to do it with, because not only does it help you follow through, but it makes it a lot more fun. The next thing that I recommend that you do for this challenge is track your progress. And this can be done in a whole bunch of different ways. You can do it on paper, you can do it on an app, you can do it in a WhatsApp group. Like, there's so many ways to do it. What I did for my community was I actually made an interactive Google Sheet. Like, if y'all know, like, I'm all about building systems and easy ways to track things. So I built out a full Google Sheet with like progress bars and check boxes and, oh my gosh, all of the fun things, so that I was able to see, my brain can see like a progress bar of how well I'm doing. But you don't need to make it that fancy. You can literally just pen and paper. I do my walk today, yes or no? Right? Like something that is on your bathroom mirror so you can see it every day. Something that's on the home screen of your phone. Maybe you have a habit tracker app that you love. Maybe you want to create some kind of fancy checklist system in Asana or Trello. Maybe you want to put it on Google Calendar. So many ways to do this, but you do need to track it somehow so that you can show yourself how far you've come. If you've ever heard of the concept of the gap and the gain, this is actually a book. We like to, as humans, always focus on the gap. And the gap is how far we have to go from where we are to where we want to be. From the energy we have now to the energy that we want. The body weight we have now to the body weight we want. The business income we have now to the business income we want. We're always focused on the gap. But what we never actually take time to look at is the gain. And the gain is looking at from where we started to where we are now. Right? Where was your business when you started? Where is it now? Where was your health when you started listening to this podcast? Where is it now? Right? Like always looking at the gain. And I find that by tracking it on those days where we need to create some compassion for ourselves, like if something comes up and you just literally cannot walk that day, you get to look at the gain and be like, hey, look what I did. I've actually done all of these steps so far. I have done all of these days. When I started, I was barely moving. Like, so many entrepreneurs, when I look at their health and fitness data, they come into my programs taking about 2,000 to 3,000 steps per day. When they leave, they're usually somewhere up around 7,000 to 8,000 steps per day. Now, if you're looking at like where we're going, you might always feel like, I'm not doing enough. But I love this idea of being able to look back and being like, oh my gosh, I am moving on average 5,000 steps per day more than I was when I started. And this is why tracking is going to be so important. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of different options for metrics to track. I'll tell you which ones I did, and I'll give you a whole bunch of other options. It depends on what your goals are. So when you pick one of these options, keep in mind, is it about mental health? Is it about regular like longevity and health, or is it about discipline? Okay. So one of the ways that you can measure your walking challenge, your 30-day walking challenge, is, did I do a walk? Yes or no. It can be as simple as that. And this is often what I recommend if you just want the mental health benefits, is like, okay, I want to become someone who walks, even if it's 5 minutes per day. I want to be someone who walks, right? So that may be a really good target metric to set. Now, I set mine for a minimum of 15 minutes per day. I wanted to spend moving in some type of walking form. I actually did, I think I did about 85% of mine is just walks, but some of those walks were incline treadmill walks. Some of them were power walks. Some of them were just regular walks. Some of them were like a walk-run combo, right? But I loved this idea of committing to a 15-minute walk, because on those days where I was at my computer a long time or it was pouring rain outside, I could tell myself, like, I can commit to 15 minutes. And I know this because I could easily lose 15 minutes scrolling on Instagram without a problem. No, easy, right? Like, we've all done it before. You pick up your phone and all of a sudden you're like watching cat videos on TikTok and we don't even know how we got there, right? That doom scrolling. If I can do that for 15 minutes, then I definitely have time to walk. And realistically, if you want to hack this, you can actually tell yourself, if I'm going to scroll on Instagram or TikTok or watch YouTube videos, I have to do it while walking, right? Because then you're like, okay, well, and then I don't have to tell myself I can't do this, but at least I'm walking, right? So go out for a walk, hop on a treadmill, get those steps in while you're scrolling. At least you get your body moving, right? Really just depends again on what your goal is heading into this. So walk completed or not. That's progress marker number one. I usually do like to set an amount of time. So 5 minutes, great. 15 minutes, great. 30 minutes, great. Do something that you feel you can successfully achieve, because honestly, most days I walked for between 20 minutes and 2.5 hours. So I never really walked 15 minutes. So just set it as your minimum standard, not your dream goal. If my dream goal was to walk an hour a day, I honestly would still set it at 15, because I'm just getting in the habit of being someone who walks, not someone who achieves the perfect goal every single time. So metric number 2 that I would use to monitor would be daily step count. Now, if you do have an Oura ring, and you have the option to have another device like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, I would highly recommend that you use the Fitbit or the Apple Watch to track your steps. I have found that the watch is a lot more accurate. So when I'm even doing something like recording a podcast episode, my ring is going to record a lot of steps because I'm a hand talker. And so if you talk with your hands at all or you move your hands around, the ring is going to pick up a lot of those as steps, even though they're not actually steps. And so that is why I use my Fitbit, because my Fitbit does not pick up my arm waving as actual steps. So you can use, like I said, if it's an Oura ring that you have, use the Oura ring. If it's a watch that you have, use the watch. If you don't have anything at all, two options here. You can go to like Walmart or something, Amazon, and buy like a $10 pedometer. It's something that you just clip onto your pants on your hip bone. It's super cheap. It'll measure your steps. And the other thing you can do, like most of our phones have built-in pedometers in them. You would just literally have to have it on you all day. That's the only issue. But it is something that works and it's free because you have a phone anyways. So daily step count is another one. When I did this challenge, I set my daily step count as 7,000 steps per day. The reason for that is our brains love to say, let's do 10,000 steps per day. But have you ever wondered why 10,000 steps per day? You ever wondered? Well, 10,000 steps per day is actually a completely arbitrary number that was picked by a Japanese marketing company who wanted to sell more of their step counters or their pedometers. And this was just the random number they picked. It doesn't really have a lot of research backing it or reflected in health. What actually is closer to what we need today per day is more in the 7,000 step per day range. And this is why I chose that goal, because it is something for me that is a little bit of a stretch, but it's not like, oh my gosh, I am having to triple my daily step count, right? So in setting your step count, if you are one of those people who are currently walking 2,000 to 3,000 steps per day, please do not set your goal at 7,000 or 10,000. Up it by 1,000. You can always do more. But I want you to set it something like realistic, because at the pace that I walk, I can walk 100 steps per minute. Okay? So this means I need to do for 7,000 steps an equivalent of 70 minutes of walking per day. Now, if you are used to getting 2,000 steps per day and you go to 7,000 steps per day, that's equivalent of 50 minutes of walking. So just make sure that you're checking with your calendar and you're like, yes, I have time for a 50-minute walk every day on top of what my normal activity level is, or I have time for 2 25-minute walks. Like, make sure of that, right? You want to make sure that this challenge is not something that you're like 10,000 steps per day, I'm going to do a 45-minute walk and all of this kind of stuff, and you don't have time for it in your calendar or schedule. You get 3 to 4 days into this challenge, get fed up with yourself because you've like missed the mark so many times in that first week. Or maybe you do get through the first week, you white knuckle it, and you're like, yeah, I did it. But then you're just worn down. I don't want that for you. This walking challenge should be fun. It should be a small stretch. It should not be something that you have to rearrange your schedule to do. All right? Fun. Everything we do needs to be fun. Okay? So daily step count. The third one you can use is distance walked. Let's say you wanted to walk 3 miles a day, or 1.5 kilometers per day, or whatever it is. Like, that's another way you could measure it. I've had some clients use the app called Strava to actually monitor that, and then they hook it up with, heart rate monitors or their watches and their apps or whatever like that. So these are all definitely really good options as well if you want to hit a certain amount of miles or kilometers while you're in your 30-day challenge. And then the other thing I do like to keep track of as a little note section, right? Because I do like to make a note whether I'm with my family, or I did a walk outside, or it was on the treadmill, or it was a solo walk. Now, having said this, so what my challenge looked like when I did it for myself is I wanted to do a minimum of a 15-minute walk every day. I wanted to do a minimum of 7,000 steps per day. I also wanted to do half of them outside. And we went on some rainy walks. There were some walks where I was like bundled up in my parka. And I mean, it's May. Why is it still raining this much in May? It's Vancouver. It always rains. But I had my umbrella. And so I was making sure that I was getting half of those walks outside. I think, let's see if I can look at the data here. By the end of the challenge, I think I had 22 of those days outside. So it definitely did more than half, which was great. The other goal that I set for myself, which this is just a personal goal, was to do 10 of those 30 walks with no input. So no headphones in, no talking to anybody, just alone with my thoughts. Now, this was one of them I actually fell short on, which I thought was really interesting. I ended up only doing, I think, 6 days like that. So this to me shines a little bit of a light, is that like I have a harder time not being plugged in. So this might be inspiration for a future challenge on looking at my connection with technology and my need to have input into my brain all the time, right? So just lots of cool ways that you can look at things, and not everything is going to be a win. A lot of it is just a fun experiment, right? So one of the questions that I did get asked when we were doing this challenge inside the community was, can I run? Does that count as a walking challenge? And I think if you are doing this 30-day walking challenge for fitness, for example, then yeah, for sure. You can use runs and walks and combos of whatever like that. If you're doing it for mental health, for example, though, I might consider walking. Because if you are already under a lot of stress with your body and your brain, running beyond a certain point is probably going to add to that, right? Running is something that keeps our cortisol levels high. So if you're looking for that de-stress, maybe consider just adding it as a walk, something small. Maybe it's like a 10-minute walk, and then you can do your runs too. But looking at what am I actually doing? What is the intention for this? Now, there are 4 resources that I would love to give you. They're already built into the podcast, so you can just go download them. Now, whenever you do any type of challenge, you're going to go through waves where you feel really motivated, and then you're like, oh, this is not that fun anymore. And then you're going to get bored of it, and then you're going to want to quit, and then you're going to want to say, what's the point? This is totally normal, by the way, this flow of motivation that goes, and this is where you get to develop the discipline, right? But I did a 4-episode series on the podcast called the Breakthrough series that'll actually walk you through what to expect for each of these stages. Now, here's what I recommend. If you listen to the first episode on week 1, the second one on week 2, the third one on week 3, and the fourth one on week 4, you'll be mentally prepared for what is coming ahead in terms of motivation. So the first one will be episode 104 on this podcast, Becoming Limitless. It's called How to Get Unstuck When You Just Start, right? Getting that motivation to get going, choosing the challenge, all of that kind of stuff, great place to start. At the beginning of your second week, I would recommend episode 105. It's how to sustain momentum after you start. And this addresses a lot of those motivation slumps that are totally natural and that happened. It shows you what roadblocks to look for, but also what is coming up ahead so that you can watch for it, solutions, all of that. The third one is called How to Stay Motivated When You're Almost There. It's a great one to listen to in week 3. And then lastly, episode 107 is the fourth one you can listen to in week 4 of your challenge, and it's called How to Maintain and Go Beyond After You Hit Your Goal. So kind of like this stage of what now? What next after my 30-day challenge, right? And that's where I really like to evaluate things like, what has been my favorite part? What didn't I like? And what am I going to do differently? And so when I'm looking at this challenge that I have just completed, I was doing some thinking about what was my favorite part about adding all of these walks in, because I did a lot of walks, and it was surprising. There was about 10 days that I did 2 walks. There was even a couple days that I did 3, because then I would bring my family out for some, I'd go on my own for some, I'd do some on the treadmill. And what I learned over this challenge was like, I got way more steps. Because in my head, I was always aiming for an average of 7,000 steps per day. But what I learned is that an average of 7,000 steps per day is way different than getting 7,000 steps per day. Because normally if I had a day where I was at my desk a lot, yeah, I'd get 5,000, but then there's days where I get 10,000 and it would average out to 7. But for me, I think the most challenging part was actually not getting the walks in, but hitting the 7,000 steps. And there was I think there was 3 nights where I was like pacing around my bedroom up and down the stairs just to get those last couple hundred to cross over that 7K mark. And so for me, I learned, okay, I got way more steps during this challenge, but I ended up finding that was the hardest part. Like, getting 7,000 is different than averaging 7,000. So that's cool that I learned. I spent way more time outside, which was really fun. I think that is so good for our circadian rhythm and our mental health to get some time outside. I did most of my walks, I would say 80% of them in the morning, right when I got up, and I'm talking like 5:50, 6 a.m. And there's this moment for me that happened about 12 minutes into every walk. And I was like, and it was just this like let go of all of this stress and a boost in energy. And you guys know that I have given up coffee. That was back in January now. And this, I feel like getting a good walk in the morning where your heart rate gets up, I found that to be as effective as a cup of coffee. It was just brilliant for the energy on my day. The other thing it got me doing was taking care of my body better. And this is something I would have done differently if I did the challenge again, is I would have done foam rolling and stretching more way earlier on in the game. Because when you start to walk more often, all of the imbalances in your body are going to pop up. You know, that ankle that's been a bit funny, that knee that nagged you a little bit, right? Because walking is a very repetitive activity. So if you are walking on funky posture, imbalanced joints, old shoes, any of these type of things, you're going to start seeing those repetitive injuries come up, because if you walk on a foot that's collapsed in and you walk like that for 7,000 steps a day, those things are going to start popping up. And so for me, I noticed my right hip started getting a little bit tight, as did my ankles. And so what I realized by about week 2 was like, I've got to be on my self-care. And so I would start foam rolling my calves, and I'd foam roll my hip. And that is something, if I do this challenge again, I'm going to start from week 1. Foam rolling and stretching. If you're, for me, I would have foam rolled before and after and stretched after. Definitely stretching after, taking that time to do a little bit of warm-up mobility drills. But I do love that this challenge has got me back into that habit of self-care for my body, of foam rolling and all of that. And so the other things that I really loved about it was how many walks I took with my family. And those were about 4 times per week. I ended up going out with my family, which was great. I got to spend time with them. We got to be out. It was spring. Flowers are everywhere. It was such a good time to really get out into nature, even if we didn't get a lot of sun. So looking forward, when you hit the end of your challenge, you get to do the same evaluation. You're looking at, what did I learn? What did I love? What didn't I love? How would I modify this so that I can keep some of these health benefits? And for me, I love being outside with my family. We are a walking family. I always joke that it's our family's love language, right? Is to do these walks together, and we get to bond, and it's outdoors, it's disconnected, there's no phones. I love that. I do want to continue this. The other thing that I realized is that walking up a hill is harder for me. Like an incline walk, like I'm talking like if I can get my treadmill up to like 12%, 14%, it is harder than running for me. And so I find I get a better workout. It's good on the glutes. It's low impact. My heart rate gets just as high as I do when I'm doing a moderate run. And so I love this as a form of cardio for me. And I'm now including it in my warm-ups to my workouts. So I will go for a 10 to 15 minute warm-up as a walk as part of my warm-ups now, right? And so I'm looking how to incorporate it. And then the only other thing that I'm going to modify going forward is I'm going to start hitting 7K steps per day proactively, like on purpose, 5 days per week. And there's going to be 2 days where I have a heavy work day or I have a headache and I'm not feeling well. But 5 days per week, I want to hit that 7K. And I think this will really help up my step count, getting that average of around 60,000 steps per week. And I think this is going to be something that's going to help. And so looking back at this challenge, I hit all 30 walks and I hit 7,000 steps on every single day except for one. And that was a day that I had a wicked headache. It's, one of those days where every time you take a step, your head vibrates. And I was like, oh, no, we're not doing this. But it did come close. I got just under 5,300 that day. So really learning to be like, it's okay, Tanessa. The goal was never perfection. The goal was to have fun with this. The goal was to be able to get outside, to move my body more, to sharpen my discipline. Because I gotta tell you, like I said, there's a couple days in there that I was like, no bueno, I don't really feel like walking today. But I got out and did it anyways. And I ended up finishing this challenge, I think in the month of May, so May 1st to May 30th, I ended up finishing this challenge with just over 280,000 steps in the month of May. I've never looked at a month of steps before, but I was like, dang, that's a lot of steps. I was really proud of myself for that. So this is the 30-day walking challenge. I know we did a lot of conversation on looking at intention and what matters in your walks, like why are you doing it? What's the purpose? A bunch of ways to stay accountable, a bunch of ways to measure it, some resources to keep you motivated so you know what mental drama might come up for you. And then lastly, looking at, okay, you're at the end of it. Like what did you love? What did you not love? What are you going to keep? How are you going to modify it? So I hope this has been really helpful for you and that you do a 30-day walking challenge of your own. I would love it if you would come over, say hi to me on Instagram, or if you're out doing a walking challenge, heck, tag me in it on Instagram. Come say hi. Let me know you're doing the walking challenge so I can root you on, because the more accountability you have, the better. So I hope you guys have a beautiful week. If you take on this challenge, happy walking challenge, and I will see you next time. Bye. Want to know more about the Becoming Limitless program? Everything you need to know is linked in the description. You can head to my website at tanessashears.com to learn all about the program. Or if you're not ready to work together yet, you can check out my free podcast, Becoming Limitless. It's the go-to podcast for entrepreneurs who want to optimize their brain and their body with biohacking.